All right, then. Thank you so much for taking the time. Really, really appreciate you're a successful entrepreneur, has started Optimizely, and now you're scaling Limitless. And it's really amazing to have you here. Thank you so much. So I want to start with your experience, right? So you've scaled Optimizely and it reached 400 million ARR. These were the latest numbers I've seen, and you clearly receive praise from Paul Graham, who work with the best in Silicon Valley. Now you're running Limitless, which has been growing really fast. What were the lessons that you've learned at Optimizely that you applied early on at Limitless?
Yeah, it's so many lessons I learned from Optimizely, but actually some of the things that I'm applying to Limitless are the things I wish I had done differently, knowing what I know now at Optimizely. There's things that we did work well then that works now. Obviously creating a product that sort of gives a magic moment as quickly as possible, finding ways to show value and sort of allow customers to go on the kind of a crawl, walk, run journey with you. At Optimizely, that was you put in your website into our homepage and you could see a visual editor making changes right away. That was kind of this magic moment for a lot of people for whom just making a change to their website was a huge deal. And then with Limitless, similarly, we want to show that value really quickly. So that was I would say, a common theme. But most of the things I'm doing now are really lessons I learned by making mistakes at my first company. And I have a whole theme of tweets on this theme, which fall into the pattern of, first time founder X, second time founder Y. And the reason I think those resonate is because these are all problems I actually had when I was a first time founder. I can rattle them off, but probably the biggest one is this belief that the main thing is that the main thing should stay the main thing, which is an old quote. And that quote really reminds me that at the end of the day, if I look back at Optimizely, our success and where we failed, most of what actually led to our ultimate success was getting two or three things or maybe four things really right. The vast majority of the things I spent my time on actually didn't really make a difference. The hard part is knowing in the moment what those things are. In hindsight, you have perfect clarity. In the moment, you have to have judgment to know where you want to focus your time and energy. But that's probably the biggest lesson I learned from my first startup that I've tried to apply here is the main thing is the main thing should stay the main thing.
Awesome. Can you describe a little bit more about what's the main thing for Limitless and what you're trying to keep it as the main thing?
Yeah, I mean, Limitless is a personalized AI powered by what you've seen, said, or heard. So our product is really rooted in this idea that AI is amazing, large language models are amazing. They're getting better and better every day, but they still know nothing about you. And so we really try to focus on how do we leverage the best of these foundation models and build a product that just gets better and cheaper on its own as the models get better, and really focus on where we can have differentiated value, which is in things like the context, capturing more and more of what you say, see, and hear. That's why we offer the pendant, which lets you capture conversations, things you say and you hear, and make those conversations useful using AI. So for us, the main thing is getting right now. The main thing is getting the pendant to be a product that just delivers on the promise of what I just said. There's a lot of companies out there that I think made the mistake of especially hardware companies that made the mistake of over promising and under delivering. We're trying to kind of walk the line where we try not to even overpromise too much. We really just want to deliver because I think there's an appetite and desire for that. So right now, the main thing is product. How do we build a product that delivers? That changes from time to time. It's not always the same main thing. Once maybe at some point it may be hiring a key executive or solving a particular quality issue or really getting down to a cultural issue. The main thing can change, but the point is you have to be clear. What is your main thing right now? And then at least walk the walk when it comes to delivering on what you think is the main thing at any given point.
Interesting. I love the pendant. It looks really nice. So it's really nice to see in real life. I don't know if I've seen you wearing before in interview, so this is a first. I will go back to the pendant later on, but I want to talk a little bit more about your overnight success. So, I mean, Optimizely, you've grinded and made it, such a big and successful business, working, for many years, and now Limitless. It seems that it took you some time, to get to actually have Limitless to grow revenue into like exponential curve as you share online. Can you describe a little bit about the early days and this process over the years that it took you to actually get to an overnight success? What it was and the early years of Limitless a little bit.
Yeah, I'll start by saying we still have a lot of work to do on Limitless. So I wouldn't say we've solved everything, and frankly, we can always be going better. We can always be doing better. So I don't want to fall victim to this idea that we've made it and the rest is easy. In fact, my experience, startups just get harder over time. They don't get easier. I think one of the tricks founders tell themselves is like, oh, just as soon as I raise the next round or as soon as I hire this key executive, everything will get easier. It doesn't. So I'm prepared to know that today is the easiest it's ever going to be for Limitless, and every day hereafter it's only going to get harder. So that's the first thing I'll say. But I do think generally a startup is a journey that starts with a premise or an idea or an insight, and ultimately that insight is only as good as the market is willing to validate it. So it's easy to fall in love with a vision. It's easy to fall in love with kind of your own drink your own Kool-Aid. But really, at the end of the day, all that matters is solving problems for users. And so we started with a problem that was rooted in an experience I had when I was in my 20s. I started to lose my hearing, and I tried a hearing aid when I turned 30, and it was magical. And the reason it was magical is because I felt like I had gained a sense. Losing a sense and gaining it feels like gaining a superpower. And ever since that moment, I've been on a hunt for ways that technology can augment human capabilities and give us superpowers, really help us overcome our biological limitations. That's why it's called Limitless. And so, but it took us a while to get to what we're doing now. We've been sort of meandering through this idea maze, which is a term one of our investors, Andreessen Horowitz, describes sort of the journey of a startup entrepreneur. You're navigating this idea maze. It started with a meeting bot called Scribe. Then we evolved to Rewind, which is a Mac app that captures what you see, say, and hear. And most recently, we've evolved to Limitless, which sort of takes everything we've learned from both those products and delivers a product that we think really solves this problem of overcoming our biological limitations. So, it's in hindsight, obviously, I could very sugarcoat it, but it wasn't obvious. Knowing what I know now, I would have certainly started with what we're doing now. But it takes sort of being out in the market and learning and growing and iterating with users to really start to learn what matters and what doesn't.
That's really interesting. I always think about the analogy that Steve Jobs talked about of the computer being the bicycle of the mind. And I've been thinking about how to describe AI and how these AI tools, and it seems like AI is the jet of the mind if computer is the bicycle of the mind, because it enhances so much of our minds. That's very interesting. And I want to also talk a little bit about the founding story of Rewind and how you got there. So obviously Optimizely, I imagine was the HQ was in San Francisco. You now are, I think, based in Colorado. And one of your co-founders, you have two co-founders, Paul Stamey, who joined later on, and Brett, I think, who is one of your co-founders, who I think lives in New York and worked at Spotify. How did you end up meeting Brett, and how did you decide both to start Limitless at the time?
Yeah, so Brett actually applied on our website. He applied as a head of user research, which is a role we were hiring for. Which typically my experience, especially early on, you rarely get somebody applying inbound that's exceptional. Brett was clearly the exception. Where I almost couldn't believe his resume. A data scientist at Spotify, amazing qualitative and quantitative research experience, exactly the kind of culture fit that we're looking for. And both Brett and Stammy were actually promoted to co-founder. We have this philosophy of really holding ourselves accountable to our cultural values. In fact, we define our cultural values exactly as those that we think will ultimately lead to our success. So there's to us, performance reviews and culture are the same thing. When we do 360s, very lightweight 360 review every quarter of every person. I get 360, I get candid feedback from my team. I give candid feedback. And it was through that process, both of them very clearly were exceptional in terms of their ability to embody our cultural values. And that's led us to the decision, okay, this person's already sort of contributing at the level that you'd expect of a co-founder. So the right thing to do is promote them to that role. And so I know that's a bit atypical, but I do think is actually a much better approach than most founders take, which is, oftentimes it's sort of the shotgun wedding approach to, I need a co-founder because YC won't let me in if I don't have a co-founder. And who do I know that's good? And you end up sort of putting a lot of risk up front. If you make a decision there, then most startups fail early on because of founder disputes and I can get into why, but basically if you're able to do it in this way where you can hire somebody, clearly validate through their work and impact that they deserve that, I think that's an approach worth considering. I know it's atypical, but it's worked really well for us.
That's super interesting. Yeah, the shotgun wedding is a really good analogy, but yeah. So interestingly enough, I think Limitless is one of the most important AI companies in this AI wave. And you're based in Colorado, right? And the company is remote. Can you describe a little bit of the pros and cons of having the company remote and you in Colorado versus what you did before?
Yeah, I have actually an amazing A/B test here because San Francisco based, San Francisco in the heart of it, with a great office physical location with Optimizely, it's a different time, but and now polar opposite, remote first, anyone can live and work wherever they want. So there are definitely pros and cons. I think the biggest benefit of remote first is we can hire truly exceptional people no matter where they live. There are a lot of great people in the Bay Area, and I think that many of them are flocking back to the Bay Area, but there's also many people who don't happen to live in the Bay Area. And so the talent pool that we can hire is dramatically larger. And for my approach with Limitless is to truly try to hire exceptional people and keep the team small. At Optimizely, I think, we try to hire good people, but we'd also hired a lot of people for whom this was their first biggest job. It was the first time they did a thing, which you have a lot of upside, but you come with a lot of risk. So I'd rather, in their days now with Limitless, with a team of 20, that we're able to have more impact and ship faster than we ever did with a team of 450 at Optimizely. So I think that model of a small, very exceptional group of people actually has been proven to be a huge advantage. Now, the downside is coordination. Obviously, if you're all in the same office, you got water cooler conversations, you get, sort of the kinds of conversations that are kind of hard to put into a Zoom that are really valuable. And so you have to put in upfront work to create a culture that recognizes that. A good part of that is writing things down. You really have to be explicit. You can't just assume sort of the tribal knowledge that you get from being in person is kind of shared broadly when you're remote. So writing things down is critical. We have an approach to meetings that is I think really important. For example, even if two people are in the same room, and maybe we're co-working out of WeWork in San Francisco and they're on our team, we still have them dial in separately to Zoom meetings. And we think, just wear a good pair of noise canceling headphones. It's maybe a bit distracting, but we think small things like that make a huge difference, because what that does is it doesn't make it feel like people who don't happen to be in San Francisco. We don't make them feel like second-class citizens. They're just as much in the meeting as the people in the room. And there's this psychological difference. When you have a room of people for whom the in-person conversations are subtle things and cues that get sent that you don't see remotely. So we try to really embrace this idea of writing things down, being really remote first. And the last thing I'll say that's critical to doing it well is you have to meet in person at least once a quarter, maybe more. A truly remote company that doesn't meet all in person, I think, is a recipe for disaster, because you just don't build the trust and connection and rapport, this esprit de corps, this sort of energy, the momentum that being in person gives you. And I think you can have your cake and eat it too if you just fly everyone in together once a quarter, build those connections, build that trust, especially for new employees. That's critical. And then you can go back and being super efficient at home, working remotely. But I do think if you don't have that, it's almost destined to fail.
Very interesting. These are great lessons. And I want to jump in a little bit more into the business that you're building. By the way, your co-founders, as you mentioned, are amazing. You talked about, an exceptional team, and like, for example, Stami is well known for his design skills. I mean, I've been following him for a while. His website is really nice. Also, a great photographer. So you definitely have an exceptional team. But I want to dive in a little bit about your business. So Ramp, for example, relays that Limitless is one of the top spends in card spending for businesses, at least small and medium businesses. And you also have, the Pendant and the Mac app. How do you see these different parts of the businesses, given that, usually B2B businesses, they usually have a sales force if they're targeting the more enterprise, customer, let's say, versus, the consumer business. How do you see that in terms of your business and how you basically structure the company?
Yeah, I mean, I'll start with a secret, which is we are selling to pirates, not the Navy. And so when you see that graph, or that, we're the number one best-selling AI product to small and medium businesses, according to Ramp, What that is actually not some IT person at these companies saying, "Oh, we should buy Limitless for the company." It's a bunch of people who happen to work at that company who say, "Boy, my life is busy. I need a tool that augments me, not replaces me with AI, but uses AI to augment my natural capabilities and my natural intelligence." And they vote with their dollars, and they happen to use a company credit card to do it. Its product is cheap enough that it doesn't have to go through some fancy procurement system. And so that's what you're seeing there is a bunch of individual people at those companies saying to themselves, "Boy, my life is hard. I wish I had a product to make it easy." And the aggregate of that is that company tends to spend more money on Limitless, but it's not because of some tops-down enterprise B2B sales motion. We are much more B2C than we are B2B in that sense. And we just happen to be a tool that people who value productivity, who value being better, that's sort of the common theme with a lot of our users. They just want to be better. They're likely using, a sleep tracking device, maybe fitness tracking. Why not have a tool that helps them with how they communicate, how they show up in the world, helps them augment their memory, helps them focus. So that's what you're seeing there. It's not some sort of amazing go-to-market sort of tops down. Let's go nail the top Fortune, 1,000 equivalent for startups. And so that's kind of the approach, and that leads to sort of like the product we build. And from the outside, it might seem like a bunch of different things, but at the end of the day, they're all one product. They're all Limitless. It's all one holistic product that fits seamlessly with the technology you already use. So we're not trying to replace your smartphone. We build a Mac app, a web app, a Windows app, and a wearable, all because that's the best solution to the problem. It's not because we're some gluttons for punishment and we want to build a hardware because we've got some ego associated with a physical device. It's just like happens to be the best solution. So I think it starts with focusing on the problem, recognizing that there are a lot of people out there who just, if given a solution to a problem they care about, they'll take out their company credit card, pay for it, then that's great.
That's amazing. And why did you decide to go, towards the pirates instead of, the big enterprise? Is there a trade-off that you're willing to make there?
Yeah, it is certainly hard mode. To sell to consumers, you can't cheat by having a human be in the loop. And so at Optimizely, we did a lot of cheating. We built a product that was good. The sales team was great, and we were able to sell a vision of where we're going that people were willing to spend $2,000 a month on a product that wasn't quite worth it at that time. And over time, it got better. When you're building for consumers, it's much more pure. You don't have a human on your team that can one by one sell somebody on a vision that doesn't exist yet. So I would say it's hard mode, but it's also, high risk, high reward. If we nail it and build a product that truly is great, you now have access to 7 billion people on this planet because of the product, not because of your sales team. So you don't have to hire human beings. And the easy mode is like, if you want to do B2B SaaS, that's great. You can hire a human being. It's pretty easy to sell to another startup or other team or a company. But at the end of the day, the product isn't as pure. You're sort of cheating. And cheating, I don't mean as a dismissive or negative way. It's just like you're able to buy yourself time by selling through human beings versus by selling through the product. So I know it's a trope to say that a product should sell itself, but I do think that's a goal that we try to achieve, which is a product that's so damn good that people buy it, despite the fact that we don't have human beings on our team to sell them. And the other thing I'll say is, the pirate decision was really rooted in the problem. If what we're selling is a product that captures a lot of your day, it captures what you say, what you hear, the last thing that you want to buy is a product that you think your employer is using to spy on you. So just by definition, if what we're offering is value through capturing more and more of your day, then ultimately you need to be the customer. If we sold through your company, there's always going to be a bias or what is this surveillance? Is this, and certainly you wouldn't want the government to surveil you. So it's just naturally that sort of led to the conclusion, of course, like this is a product that human beings need to buy, not the IT team at your company, because otherwise you're always going to have this concern. So I think that's another big advantage to our approach is we sell to people for whom the problem is so visceral that they care about it. But last thing we want them to do, and certainly, the way we've designed and architected the product, your boss can't see, we even offer a product feature called Lockdown, where we don't even have access. It's end-to-end encrypted. We're the only tool out there that does that. And so, those are all rooted in the fact that we're selling to individuals who are capturing more and more of their day. And we want their privacy not to come at the cost of convenience, but give them privacy and the convenience of a personalized AI.
Very interesting. We'll talk a little bit more about the privacy aspects of Pendant and Limitless in general. And you're developing Pendant, which you show, which is like this really cool hardware tool, which will grab, your voice and your interactions. And that's a hardware that's like different from, software where you can you can update the software every day, and there's like the feedback loop is much faster, right? What kind of challenges have you encounter developing this new hardware, and how does that compare to develop software?
Yeah, it is so much harder. And by the way, lots of very smart people tried to talk me out of it, and I'm very grateful that they're willing to let us take a leap on it, even though it is hard. Especially as a software guy, you get accustomed to just the flexibility, nimbleness, reactivity, the fact that most decisions in software are two-way doors, they're not one-way doors. Hardware, that's not the case, and so that's sort of rooted in answering your question around sort of the product is we really tried to build a product that the things that mattered, the things that were one-way doors, we did exceptionally well, and everything else we did in software. And so in fact, if you go to Limitless AI right now, everything you are using in the app, the Mac app, the Windows app, the web app, all of that is the actual software that the pendant is going to run on. And that is actually a decision by design, which is let's nail that part first, the harder user experience questions. Let that lead to then the decisions around what the hardware should do. Once we know what we're solving for in terms of the software, and not put all of the weight on the software on device. And that's where I do think when you look at these problems as kind of there's products out there, I won't name names. So there are a lot of products out there that if you look at their history, what they really are hardware problems in search of a problem. They're hardware products in search of a problem. They're basically, wouldn't it be cool if ... startups. In any startup that starts with wouldn't it be cool if, and it involves the desire to start with the need for hardware, I think you end up in these situations where you build a product that is a technology in search of a problem. We sort of really took the opposite approach, which is like they had, the hardware, the pendant was the market dragging and pulling us into building physical atoms, which is not and then also really focusing the scope. It does not have lasers. It does not have a speaker. It does not even have a camera. It's really focused on doing a few things exceptionally well. And to the extent that we do anything fancy, we do that in software. So that's been kind of rooted in this approach that hardware is hard and there's a lot of one-way decisions and one-way doors.
And what kind of challenges have you encountered specifically? Is it with the manufacturing, finding the right, manufacturer, or obviously, software you can just write it down and then it's just there? Is it the feedback loop also slow, or are there like more specific things that you've encountered?
Yeah, I would say the theme of things are in the class of the unknown unknowns. If we had perfect insight and perspective up front, we would solve and prevent them. But until you physically wear it on your body, like I'm dog fooding, you don't know the things that you might otherwise imagine. So for example, right now, the pendant as it is designed in this iteration, people don't know how to put it on. They don't know what's front and what's back. Things like that we never would have imagined. But until you actually do user research and put it in people's hands, you don't imagine. The front plate, glue, things like this that you just don't, until you physically hold it. The way it feels, the way you unbox it. One of my, big tests, I have 3 young kids, a 6-year-old, a 4-year-old, and a 2-year-old. And when I wear it, it's a very attractive thing for they pull off and play. And so those things, what will the things you cannot predict about a hardware product? How will a 4-year-old use it when they pull it off your shirt? And that's where you just need to learn. You need a dog food. My 4-year-old described it. The first thing he did was he took it off my shirt, put it over his eyes, and he started singing pendant eyes, pendant eyes, pendant eyes. You don't know that that's what a 4-year-old's going to do. And so that's where, you got to build that into the feedback loop. And obviously you want to be a product that is resilient to a 4-year-old's imagination. And so that's what we've been doing.
That's awesome. That's a funny story. Going back to Optimizely and the differences between Optimizely and Limitless. So Optimizely, I think it started the company back in 2010, which was the mobile era, right? Steve Jobs had released the iPhone back then, and now Limitless, I think it started in 2020. And it seems that Limitless is riding the AI wave. Are there any lessons that you've learned now that that you're in your entrepreneurial journey, given now that you're riding the AI wave?
Yeah, the biggest lesson I would learn is if you're a founder and you're thinking what startup to start, do not start a startup because you see a wave. In fact, at least I didn't do that. I certainly
Yeah,
didn't start Optimizely because we were in part of in fact, we started Optimizely like one of the worst times possible. The market, 2008 market, we actually started in 2009. Like it was not because of market timing. And certainly when we launched, we founded this company March 2020. ChatGPT hadn't even launched. So, in the sense
interesting.
that you should be thinking about waves, I would think about them as the Agile Manifesto says, which is it's better to respond to change than to follow a plan. I certainly would not have built, and we wouldn't be building what we're building today had not ChatGPT changed the world and large language models getting better and better. It wasn't because AI is a wave, let's ride it. It was, oh, that happens to be there. Now, how do we build a company and adapt in a market, in a world where you get tremendous tailwind by benefiting from it? So it starts with this idea that you should start a company because you're obsessed with a problem, not because you're excited about a solution or a technology or a wave. If you want to focus on that problem with the lens of that wave, that's great. But it shouldn't be, oh, mobile's big, I should do a mobile app, or AI is big, I should do an AI app. You're almost always going to fall victim to what I mentioned earlier, which is technology in search of a problem.
Interesting. And so you've seen, the release of GPT-3, GPT-4. Are there any feature unlocks that you've seen along the way that you actually implemented with Limitless when they were released, these different models?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
We are giddy every day. There's companies that every time a new foundation model comes out from either Anthropic or OpenAI, there's some companies that are nervous. They're like, oh, are we going to get steamrolled? And they have just built a business that is at risk of being steamrolled. We have just decided really early on that, look, let's build a company that no matter what is announced by any of these large foundation models, we will be giddy with joy that these models are better and cheaper. And that's certainly been the case. When GPT 4.0 came out, overnight, our product became half as expensive to serve, just as good and half the cost to us. So we just got better margins overnight. And so that's the trend that we're riding, which is what the analogy I would draw is like, if it's 1996 and you're an internet company, you don't have to do anything. Your product gets more users because more people are getting on the internet. People are getting faster bandwidth, so your product gets faster. So that is how we've positioned ourselves, which is like we want our product to just automatically, if we did nothing, but we're doing a lot, but if we did nothing, it would still get cheaper and better. And so that's the approach we've taken with these large language models. So yes, every time a new model comes out, our product just gets better and cheaper.
Yeah, so I want to drill down a little bit more about the model size and cost related to what you're building. You talked a little bit about the cost there. How do you think about the cost of these models and how that affects, how you integrate these models with your product?
Yeah, we think about it as let's build toward where the puck is going, which is let's not be overly fixated on, is this going to cost us a lot today? Knowing that if a lot of that inference gets cheaper, it might be, de minimis in just a few months. One good example is we have a feature in Limitless called Live Notes, which means in any conversation, just like this one, I have live notes streaming for this conversation. Everything you're saying, everything I'm saying is being beautifully put together as if I had a world-class stenographer. It's as if I had a team of expert note takers with me in this conversation, taking notes meticulously, highlighting the key points, categorizing it. And that today is done automatically through a process of we keep asking an LLM, here's the transcript, create great notes. Here's the transcript, great notes. That's pretty expensive because we're constantly doing it in real time during a meeting. It would have been much cheaper to say, you know what, real time note taking is not important. Let's just do it at the end when the transcript's done. Well, that's not a great user experience because you don't have trust. Is it doing what you want? Is it capturing what you need? And so we just said, okay, that's going to be really expensive today when we built it. And then we were right that 6 months later, when it's now in the hands of users, just because the underlying foundation models are cheaper, it got better and easier. So that's the approach we've taken, which is let's not overly fixate on cost today. Inference is going to get cheaper and better. Let's skate to where the puck is going and build features that are delightful in a world where the cost of intelligence is asymptoting to zero.
Interesting. But I mean, I imagine that all these companies are always going to release them most costly models that they can release, right? So, I mean, OpenAI may release GPT-5, this year, and it's going to be pretty costly. And maybe next year, GPT-6. And I imagine that's like basically at the edge, right? Like if it's too costly, people are not going to run it. Do you think about that? Or just as you mentioned, riding the wave?
Yeah, the pattern that we've seen from Anthropic and OpenAI, and I think other providers are following this pattern because they see that's kind of where the market is segmenting, is they always have two amazing models. They have one model, which is best inference, highest cost, slowest. And they have another model, which is slightly worse inference in terms of quality, but super fast and super cheap. Obviously, for them
Interesting.
to run it, the fast and the cheap are kind of related. Where if the model is computing and doing a lot of inference, it's a little bit slower, and that costs them more money. And every company has sort of found these. There's GPT-4o mini or whatever, and then there's GPT-4 like the best. And so we have just built products that sort of align one. We have one that is like, it has to be the world's best inference that's possible at the time. I assume with GPT-5, that's going to be in the class of things like agentic desires, things you wanted to go do. If you had an LLM use the context of your past to book you a flight for you and your wife to Italy for 3 weeks, you want that to be the absolute best agentic behavior, because if that, the cost of getting that wrong is low. On the flip side, if you have a use case like live notes that's happening in real time as the meeting's going on, that's where you want it to actually be fast and cheap, because the difference between the marginal benefit of a slightly better inference on the notes versus the cost and speed trade-off is not ideal. So I think that's what we're seeing is these providers have found that like the market is pulling them into kind of these two key areas, and they both compete. They're both competing. That's the other thing, is it benefiting us. They compete like crazy, keep dropping costs. Every time, and we've built our business to shift, even though we've got, the co-founders of OpenAI as investors in us, we still are willing to shift. We have no allegiances to one or the other. We shift to whatever's the best model. And that's given, we get an email from OpenAI saying, hey, what's going to take to switch back? Similarly, Anthropic is eager to get us to switch to them. So that's benefiting us tremendously.
That's amazing. So talking about costs and also pricing. So I think you've switched a little bit the model of the pricing, if I'm not mistaken, from, you had 3 tiers of pricing to 2 tiers of pricing. Was that something that the market told you about, or is it related, to the cost related to run the service? Can you talk a little bit more about the process of updating the pricing?
Yeah, so my philosophy on pricing is that it should be rooted in value. Ideally, you price your product and you package your product specifically such that the value you create for a user for a particular package is way greater than the cost to them. It should be a no-brainer after you've been activated, as to the point I said before, bringing users on a journey of crawl, walk, run. After they've seen the magic, they've seen the value, they've seen they've seen the light. That's when you want to have a package that allows them to say, okay, this is valuable. I've seen it. It's not a risk. I'm not going to buy and regret. I'm going to buy and evangelize. I'm going to buy and say, this is the best damn thing I've ever used, and I'm going to tell everyone I know about it. So that's how you want to think about packaging. It's more about the value than it is about the cost. Now, that said, you also don't want to be upside down on cost. You don't want to create a product that is so valuable and you capture a small portion of that value and you're still spending more in terms of the cost to serve than you are in terms of the value you create and the cost that you can extract from the value you create. So it's kind of doing both, but it really should start with the value. There's a technique called a Van Wastendorp pricing technique where you get sort of price sensitivity and you kind of basically you do a survey of users. And I actually think this is really underutilized by founders out there, because you can get a good sense of your price and people's willingness to pay your price long before you build the product. In fact, it should inspire you to what product to build, is to see how much you can actually extract. But you basically ask a sample of your audience 4 questions. And I believe the questions are something like this. Number 1, at what price would this product, you describe the product and you say, at what price would this product be so cheap that you'd question its quality? That's sort of the lowest price. Then you ask, at what price would this product start to seem expensive? Then you ask, what price would this product be too expensive that you'd sort of not consider using it? And the other is, sort of the last question is something like, what price is this too expensive, basically? And you get basically 4 numbers that should all be increasing. And if you survey enough people, you can draw these amazing graphs where you see the intersection, sort of the optimal price point, where the value perceived is enough that you justify the cost to the user. And at the same time, it's not too cheap. I think a lot of founders, when they see the cost and they build it themselves, are, how hard could this be? They sort of undervalue it. But you also recognize from a user perspective, they may think it's too cheap, it's too good to be true. And so you can find these like optimal price points. That's how we found $19 a month as kind of an optimal price point. I actually think a lot of vendors out there are cargo culting off of OpenAI and choosing $20, and they're actually missing out on a lot of perceived value in that $1 difference. And that's how we think about pricing. So our pricing is rooted in this kind of value-driven Van Wastendorp price sensitivity study.
That's amazing. I never heard of that way of pricing, but I imagine a lot of companies like Apple and consumer companies use it. So let's talk about privacy. You mentioned a little bit of privacy. It's end-to-end encrypted. I've seen that Limitless has this thing called confidential cloud. Can you talk a little bit more about how that works and how you integrate privacy into the product?
Yeah, I'll start by saying that Facebook did the world a huge disservice by making people think that their privacy should come at the cost of convenience, or that convenience should come at the cost of privacy. The idea that you are the product. You know, if you want something great, you have to be the product. You're the product to the advertisers, and we're just going to sell your privacy. I actually think that is a misguided idea. If you look at every major technological innovation, all the way back to the telephone, the trigger to making it a mass market adopted technology is a solution that recognizes that privacy should not come at the cost of convenience, and convenience should not come at the cost of privacy. If you think about the telephone, just that in particular, when the phone first came out, if you look at the very first New York Times article about the phone, people's concerns were around privacy, which is like crazy. The phone? Well, it's because people were, at the time, the very first version of the phone, you needed to go to the general store to make a phone call and people could eavesdrop. Even when the phone came to your house, there's this concept of party lines where you sort of shared a phone line with your neighbors. And even then, after you gave your phone line to your own house, you had this notion of eavesdropping switchboard operators. And so it wasn't until the phone actually solved privacy that it became mass market. And I think the same is true of personalized AI. Personalized AI is right now in what I describe as the personalized AI privacy paradox. And the paradox is really simple. It's basically the idea that the more you capture about your life, the more useful personalized AI is. The more, for example, when I wear a pendant and I capture conversations that I might not have captured otherwise, those conversations are super valuable. Things I might not have. What did my wife say right before I went to go to Trader Joe's to get something? I swear, tip of the tongue. What was it? What did she want me to buy? Those moments are very hard to capture, with foresight. You're not going to take notes on that. But if you have the ability to have something that captures more of your day, then it's more useful. So number one, the paradox is it's more useful with more context. On the flip side, it's also more scary. The more context you have, the more things you capture, the more data privacy concerns come up. The more data privacy concerns come up, the harder it is to deliver on personalized AI. And that's where we really found our sweet spot, is how do we walk this paradox better than the incumbents? Microsoft, I think, is one extreme. They shipped a product called Recall, which was a shameless imitation of Rewind, and they didn't even encrypt the database. They didn't even think about the underlying privacy issues. And that's one side of the paradox where I think they fell victim. They walked tight roping this paradox, and they fell victim, and they fell into landmine on one side. And you have Apple on the other side. They launched this really sophisticated, really complicated solution because they're paranoid about privacy. Oh my goodness, what if what we offered would counter something that Tim Cook told Congress one day? Like, then they're way on the other extreme where it's not useful. It's doing things that are so off in terms of sort of catering to sort of the worst fears around data. So that's all to say, we built a product that's rooted in this idea that we want to deliver privacy and convenience. Confidential Cloud is that solution. Confidential Cloud recognizes that we want to build a product that makes the data that you capture safe from your employer, safe from us, and safe from the government. That's why we've implemented a feature called Lockdown. We are the only tool out there that lets you lock down your data where we don't even have access to it. We as a company, if we were subpoenaed by the government to hand over your recordings, we couldn't. We could give you encrypted data, but it would take roughly an order of magnitude of the age of the universe for the government to decrypt that with the encryption that we're using. And so that's, we invest in that because we know that that's critical. If you're going to capture more and more of your day and make that useful with AI, we need to build tools and technology, the equivalent of getting rid of the eavesdropping switchboard operator for the telephone in order to build a product that will get mass market adoption.
I mean, the business that you're building is very, very interesting. And I think one of the investors of your first company called Optimizely, Peter Fenton, he actually invested one of my friend's company in Brazil called Wildlife. And now Victor is now a partner there at Benchmark. And he asked this question, I think, to you about what, would make you excited about Optimizely 5 years from the time that he invested. And I think that's a very interesting question, especially for Limitless. You're talking about this very interesting future. Can you talk a little bit more about what will be exciting about Limitless 5 to 10 years down the road?
Yeah, this question was so powerful because at the time I was too naive to understand why he was asking. Now, with hindsight, boy, do I understand. I mean, the core of the premise, I think, behind the question, by the way, this was the very first question he asked before he even invested. The core premise is, I think, a belief that in order to build a huge, successful, impactful company, which, by the way, will also likely be a huge market cap and great return for him as an investor, is a company that the founder wants to be at. And that might seem crazy. Why wouldn't the founder want to be there? But the reality is when a company gets to be 400 people and you're 10 years in, and the thing that was the spark that got you excited to start the company is now maybe solved or behind you. That certainly was the case for Optimizely. We started the company trying to build a product I wish we had on the Obama campaign in 2008, where I was the director of analytics. It was a product I wish we had to make A/B testing easy. 3 years in, we did that. And I kind of fell out of love with the company. And that was actually, I think, the beginning of the end of where we could have reached our full potential. And so when I started Limitless, I really started with this question in mind. What's the kind of company I want to be at in 5 or 10 or 50 years? And I wanted to build a company, not just because it would be joyful to work at a company I want to be at, but because I actually think that's the best way to build a valuable company. I made a mistake at Optimizely thinking that my job as the CEO was to hire people better than me and get out of the way. This was a kind of a trope that they would describe as you're a great founder if you can delegate and empower other people. But the reality is if you abdicate, not delegate, you abdicate the key things, the product, the decisions around what matters, what doesn't for the company, you actually can kind of lose touch with the company. You sort of fall out of love with it. And I wanted that to be the opposite at Limitless. So whether we succeed or fail, I'd rather build the company I want to be at and fail than not build a company. And that's why, some of the things we've done is hard mode. Like I said, it would have been super, if all I wanted to do was maximize the sort of short-term expected value of the company, I would have made a B2B SaaS company. I've done that before. That's easy. But I want to maximize the long-term expected value of the company. And that's where, starting with what I wanted to do and the problems I wanted to solve were important. Now, with that context in mind, the answer to your question is, I want to build a company that helps us overcome our biological limits, especially our mind's biological limits. And that's hard. We've been accustomed to our own behaviors, our own habits. New tools and change is hard for society. I do believe that the experience of wearing a hearing aid after losing your hearing is akin to what I want to do for the mind. How do we take what makes you and augment it with technology, augment it with AI, not replace it, but augment it? That I think is a true game-changing experience. Having worn the pendant now for a little while, I do think that it's one of those technologies where our grandkids or even our kids will look back at us today and be like, wait a minute, how did you live your lives? How did you go through your life forgetting 90% of what happens after a week? That's what we do. Humans, we forget 90% of what happens after a week. It follows what's called the forgetting curve. How did you live your lives that way? That's my hope, is in 5 or 10 years, or ideally, if we're given the right to exist in 20 or 30 years, people look back at a world, not just our company, our product, but the idea of living our lives without technology like the ones we're building.
That's super interesting. I mean, beforehand, you mentioned the Trader Joe's analogy. I can tell you that even when your wife writes down what you need to grab at Trader Joe's or elsewhere, you can always mess up.
That's right.
I have that experience. But talking about AI and AI agents, 5 to 10 years down the road, how do you think AI is going to change our lives and AI agents? How do you see the world 5 to 10 years down the road, and how is that going to change technology and how we interact with computers?
Yeah, I think agents are the next major milestone for large language models and foundation models to get right. I don't think that's the holy grail. I actually think I have seen now this inexorable trend for large language models to subsume more and more of what the human can do. If anything, it humbles me to know that human intelligence isn't all that special. I think a lot of people, they're still not there yet. They have this sort of ego-driven, anthropomorphic, or whatever, I don't know what the right word is, to think that humans are somehow superior than other systems. I wouldn't even say organisms, but systems. I was a vegetarian. I'm a big believer that even other animals like octopuses and others still show other forms of intelligence that we can't comprehend. So I do think that I already had kind of this very humbling view of the human intelligence. And I think very soon, on the order of years, not decades, AI will be better than, even the average AI will be better than almost every human on this planet. And we just have to accept that we are not as special as we thought we were. And in a world where that is true, I want to build a technology company that augments human capabilities, that gives us the feeling of a superpower, having AI help us live our lives better and more fulfilled and with greater purpose than one in which we're replaced by AI. So that's what I'm betting on, is building a technology company to do exactly that.
Interesting. Yeah, I wrote a book about AI, and we analyze. I've studied brains of animals and things like that, studies, and basically, animal intelligence correlated with for mammals with their neocortex, the size of their neocortex, birds with the paleo area, and they're animals that have language too, and they know how to use tools. So crows use tools. There are animals like dolphins that have language not as advanced, and I would imagine as these neural networks increase of size, we'll have already computers that are much smarter than even the whole um, human society. Where can people find you online? Again, thank you so much for taking the time. Really, really appreciate. Where can people find you online and find more about Limitless and can download and buy Limitless?
Head over to limitless.ai. You can use our web app right away. You don't even have to create an account. You can try it anonymously. We've got a Mac app, a Windows app. You can pre-order the pendant. Pre-order it now, and you'll hopefully get yours in time for Christmas. We've got a lot of exciting things coming soon. You can follow me on Twitter/X. I'm pretty transparent on there, I try to give back as much as I can to the extent that my advice is useful to others. And we try to be transparent, share some of the behind the scenes of what it takes to build a real hardware product, and excited to bring people along on the journey.